Here's something that's about to shake up Britain's art world in ways most people never saw coming. One of London's most prestigious cultural institutions just made a decision that could fundamentally alter how we experience centuries of artistic heritage. The renowned National Gallery has just announced a groundbreaking transformation that will reshape its very identity. After more than a century of adhering to strict collecting boundaries, this iconic institution is boldly stepping into uncharted territory by abandoning its long-standing prohibition against acquiring artworks created after 1900. But here's where it gets controversial. This move comes alongside a massive £375 million expansion project that's already stirring debates within Britain's tightly knit art community. This ambitious undertaking, christened Project Domani, which translates to tomorrow in Italian, a rather fitting name given the forward-looking nature of this initiative, represents the most significant development at a major British cultural institution since Tate Modern first opened its doors a quarter-century ago. The financial backing for this venture comes from an impressive coalition of supporters. Michael Moritz's Crankstart Foundation and the Hans and Julia Rousing Trust have each committed £150 million, while the National Gallery Trust and a mysterious group of anonymous benefactors will provide the remaining £75 million. The physical expansion will manifest as a brand new wing constructed behind the existing Sainsbury building, specifically where St. Vincent House currently stands. An international architecture competition is set to commence this Wednesday, with the winning design ultimately housing what promises to be a revolutionary space expected to welcome visitors in the early 2030s. Gabriele Finaldi, who serves as the National Gallery's director, has been remarkably candid about his vision for this transformation. Speaking to the BBC, he emphasized his commitment to preserving what makes the National Gallery special, its human-sized atmosphere that allows visitors to experience the entire collection within a single day. This philosophy stands in stark contrast to the overwhelming scale of institutions like Paris's Louvre or Madrid's Prado, where visitors often feel dwarfed by the sheer magnitude of their collections. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has thrown his full support behind the initiative, describing it as fantastic news for the National Gallery and the arts in general. He highlighted how this investment will stimulate economic growth, create educational opportunities for young people, and ensure that exceptional art remains accessible for future generations. And this is the part most people miss. The truly revolutionary aspect isn't just the new building, but the complete overhaul of the gallery's collecting philosophy. For over a century, an informal agreement between the National Gallery and Tate has maintained a clear division. The National Gallery focused on works created before 1900, while Tate concentrated on modern and contemporary pieces. This arrangement, while practical, has increasingly felt arbitrary and limiting as we move further into the 21st century. Finaldi has been refreshingly honest about his frustration with this artificial boundary. When he assumed his role as director in 2016, he openly criticized the 1900 cutoff as unnecessarily restrictive, explaining how it felt slightly frustrating to reach 1900 and then not go on. His argument is compelling. As we distance ourselves further from 1900, the need to present a more comprehensive narrative of artistic development becomes increasingly apparent. Interestingly, this supposed prohibition was never as absolute as many believed. The National Gallery already houses more than 40 works created after 1900, including pieces by legendary artists like Picasso and Cézanne. This revelation raises intriguing questions about how strictly such agreements were ever enforced, and whether they served more as guidelines than rigid rules. The timing of this policy shift carries additional significance when considering the gallery's current demographics. Of the approximately 2,300 paintings in the National Gallery's collection, a staggering 27 are created by women artists, a statistic that starkly illustrates the gender imbalance plaguing many traditional art institutions. By expanding into the 20th and 21st centuries, the gallery opens doors to acquiring works by a more diverse range of artists, potentially addressing this glaring disparity. Maria Balshaw, director of Tate, has publicly welcomed this announcement with diplomatic grace, stating her institution's intention to collaborate closely with the National Gallery to further the national collection as a whole. However, beneath this cordial surface lies a more complex reality. This shift essentially creates direct competition between these two powerhouses at a particularly challenging time for Tate, which has been grappling with declining visitor numbers and financial difficulties severe enough to necessitate staff redundancies. But here's what makes this situation truly fascinating and potentially explosive. Is this expansion actually a brilliant strategic move to secure the National Gallery's relevance in an increasingly competitive cultural landscape? Or does it represent an unnecessary disruption of a system that has worked effectively for decades? Some critics argue that this decision undermines the specialized focus that has made both institutions successful, while supporters contend that artificial boundaries have become obsolete in our interconnected cultural moment. The £375 million investment is particularly remarkable given the current climate where many arts institutions struggle to secure funding for major capital projects. This success raises questions about whether the National Gallery's approach could serve as a model for other cultural institutions, or whether such massive private donations create unhealthy dependencies that could influence curatorial decisions. What do you think about this seismic shift in Britain's art landscape? Is breaking down the barriers between historical periods essential for telling complete artistic stories, or does it risk diluting the specialized expertise that has made these institutions world-renowned? Should major cultural decisions like this be driven by private donors' visions, or should public institutions maintain more independence in shaping their missions? And perhaps most controversially, in an era where cultural institutions face increasing pressure to address historical inequities, is this expansion a genuine attempt at inclusivity, or simply an expensive way to appear progressive while maintaining underlying power structures? Share your thoughts. This is exactly the kind of cultural debate that shapes how future generations will experience and understand art.